The Storm of the Steppe, an epic in the shadow of Genghis Khan. In the boundless greenery of the steppe, the mighty voice of the wind echoed. The sky was like a colorful blue canvas, but for those living beneath it, survival was a battle. It was the year 1206, and the Mongol tribes were fragmented in the bloody reckonings of the clans. In the midst of this chaos, Temüjin was born, the man who would later be known as Genghis Khan. But this story is not so much about his victories, but rather about a family and a warrior's perspective on the savage wars of the Mongol invasions. His name was Batu, an archer, a shepherd, a survivor. Batu grew up in a small tent camp on the banks of the Onon River. His father was a warrior renowned as a horse thief, and his mother was a healer woman. The Mongol steppes were harsh. Winters froze the bones, summers scorched the deserts. When Batu was 10 years old, he witnessed the first conflict between the tribes. The neighboring Merkits had raided to seize his father's herd. At midnight, the horses' hooves shook the ground as they approached. Batu clung tightly to his mother's hand, while his father drew his bow. "Run, my son," his father whispered, releasing his arrow. The arrow gleamed like a moon in the darkness and pierced an enemy's throat. But the numerically superior Merkit set the camp ablaze. His father fired one last arrow, then felled a man with his sword. Batu fled to the river with his mother. Screams rose behind them. The red shadow of the fire licked the steppe. That night the family shattered. His father died, his mother was wounded. Batu, at 10 years old, was left fatherless. Years passed. Temüjin had escaped captivity and begun uniting the tribes. Batu survived as a shepherd. He roamed the steppes, fended off wolves, and fished from the rivers. But the fire within him had not extinguished. When he turned 18, he joined Temüjin's army. The Khan was the master of the steppe. His eyes sharp like an eagle's, his voice like thunder. "Unite or perish," he declared to the tribes. In his first battle, Batu demonstrated his archery skills. At the Khwarezmian River, they clashed against the Tatars. The enemies approached on horseback with their archers. Batu drew his bow, holding his breath. Arrows rained down like a storm. Horses neighed, men fell to the ground. Victory was a sweet poison. Temüjin was proclaimed Genghis Khan. He built his empire. With his laws, he united the tribes in an iron fist. Batu rose to the rank of Noyan, commander. But the invasions began. The first target was the neighbors to the west, the Tatars. In 1202, Genghis Khan besieged the Tatar cities. Batu was at the forefront of the army. They camped on the shores of Lake Balika. At night, they sent spies. In the morning, the assault began. The Mongol horsemen swept like the wind. Arrows pierced the walls. Catapults rained stones. The Tatar Khan was captured in his palace. Genghis had him executed. "I do not forgive my enemies, but I reward my loyal ones." After the victory, Batu thought of his family. His mother had taken refuge in a tent, wounded. He set out to find her. In the depths of the steppe, in a village, he found his mother old and exhausted. "My son, how long will this blood last?" she asked, stroking his face with trembling hands. Batu could not answer. The empire was growing. Genghis Khan had set his sights beyond the Great Wall of China. The Jin Dynasty controlled northern China. In 1211, the army mobilized. Batu set out with thousands of horsemen. The journey lasted months. Deserts and mountains were crossed. Thirst wore down the men. But Mongol discipline was unbreakable. As they approached Beijing, the Jin army awaited. The walls stood like a fortress. Genghis Khan was a master strategist. First he learned the weak points with spies, then dammed the rivers to create floods. Batu, as the commander of the archer unit, protected the teams climbing the walls. During a night raid, he encountered a Jin warrior. The man attacked with his sword. Batu dropped his bow and drew his dagger. They rolled on the ground. The struggle continued on soil stained with blood. Batu slit his opponent's throat, but he himself was wounded. The war lasted months. Beijing fell. The streets filled with corpses. Estimated deaths numbered in the hundreds of thousands. The Mongol army plundered. Gold and silks were collected. But Batu felt the pain of victory. Children were crying, women were fleeing. Is this conquest or massacre? He wondered inwardly. Genghis Khan did not stop. In 1218 he turned to Central Asia. The Karakhanids and Khwarezmians controlled the rich trade routes. Cities like Samarkand and Bukhara were the pearls of the Silk Road. But the Khwarezmians killed the Mongol envoys, a grave mistake. Genghis swore revenge. Batu was one of the vanguard of the army. Otra fortress was the first target. The siege was savage. The Mongols hurled fireballs at the walls. Arrows darkened the sky. The fortress commander resisted, but eventually surrendered. Genghis razed the city to the ground. Every stone, every bone was crushed. Inside the fortress, Batu saw a family, a father, his wife, and daughter. They were trying to escape. The order was given, leave no one alive, but his heart ached. He saved the girl, secretly sending her to a village. This was disloyalty. If caught, he would be executed. The invasion spread. The Khwarezmians fled westward. The Mongol army took Samarkand. The city was a paradise, gardens, mosques, madrasas. But with Genghis's wrath it turned into hell. The streets ran with blood. Craftsmen were enslaved. Scholars interrogated. Batu wandered among books in a madrasa. The Arabic writings enchanted the steppe man. This knowledge is stronger than the sword, he murmured. But the war continued. Bukhara fell. The people were drowned in the river. Estimated deaths this time also numbered in the hundreds of thousands. Genghis Khan pursued the Khwarezmian Shah. The Shah died in the Caspian Sea, but his son Jalal al-Din resisted. The Battle of Jalal al-Din in 1221 took place. On the banks of the Indus River, the Mongol army fell into an ambush. Batu was thrown from his horse. Arrows surrounded him. Jalal al-Din's warriors attacked like lions, but Genghis changed tactics. With a feigned retreat, he exhausted the enemy. Then the counterattack, a rain of arrows, a wave of horsemen. Jalal al-Din fled, but thousands of his men died. Batu rose to his feet, wounded. The sky was covered in smoke. Victory, but at a heavy price. Mongol losses also numbered in the thousands. The invasion spread eastward and southward. In the mountains of Afghanistan, guerrilla wars were fought. In the Bamyan Valley, Batu lay in ambush with his unit. Local tribes rained stones from the cliffs. The Mongols abandoned their horses and attacked on foot. The valleys filled with blood. Every cave became a grave. Genghis Khan advanced to the borders of India, but the climate stopped them. The heat killed the horses. Diseases spread. Batu contracted malaria. He lay in fever for days. In his dreams he saw his mother. "Return, my son. This blood curses the land." Years passed. In 1227 Genghis Khan died. The western campaign fell to his sons Ogedei and Jochi. Batu joined the army of Batu Khan, son of Jochi, ironic, the same name. But this time toward Europe. In 1236, the Kipchak steppes were conquered. The Russian principalities fell one by one. Batu besieged Ryazan. The city resisted, but the Mongols breached the walls. Street fighting was brutal. Batu duelled a Russian noble. Swords clashed. Armor was pierced. The noble died, but Batu's shoulder was wounded. Ryazan turned to ashes. The people were dragged to slave markets. The Battle of the Kalka River in 1223 was a precursor disaster, but the full conquest began in 1237. Batu Khan entered Europe. The Hungarians and Poles were unprepared. The Battle of Mohi in 1241 was the peak. The Mongol army set fire to the river bridge, trapping the enemies. Batu, at the head of the archer line, swung his bow. Arrows pierced the Hungarian knights. King Bela fled, but his army was annihilated. Estimated deaths exceeded 100,000. Batu wandered the battlefield. Corpses covered the steppe. "Is this endless?" he asked himself. But the order was to continue. They reached the gates of Vienna. Austria was in fear. But Batu Khan ordered a retreat. Great Khan Ogedei had died. The armies turned eastward. When Batu returned to the steppe, he was weary. The years had eroded his soul. He found his mother. The old woman was waiting for her grandchildren. Batu confessed he had a son, born from a captive in the war. But the story did not end happily. The Mongol Empire was at its zenith, but the invasions took millions of lives. Cities were destroyed, cultures erased. As Batu aged, he wrote his memories in a secret notebook. The storm of the steppe both created and destroyed, he concluded. Centuries later, these invasions were remembered as one of the bloodiest pages in history. 40–70 million deaths, famines, plagues, massacres. But men like Batu were merely executors of orders. They were the drops of the storm, destructive yet unforgettable.